Tiago EV, and we've already told you everything that you want to know in terms of features, design, what it has to offer when it's standing still like this. You can check it out on our walk around videos of the car when it was launched. But I'm here to drive the car and tell you more about what the Tiago EV feels like when you're on the move. Tata Motors' latest EV is also their first hatchback electric vehicle, and that's the Tiago EV. Now, this is based on the same Tiago platform, but this is part of the first gen or the Gen 1 range of electric vehicles that started life off with the Nexon EV. Then you had the Nexon EV Max, you had the Tigor as well. A month ago, Tata Motors announced the prices for the Tiago EV, starting off at 8.5 lakhs, which was very impressive. Now, this makes it also the most affordable electric hatchback you can get in the country. Prices for the Tiago EV are going to go up. I would presume this would be about a lakh of rupees or thereabouts sometime in January. And yet, even with that price hike, this is fairly good value for money where electric vehicles are concerned. Now, the Tiago EV, well, it's got two battery pack options. There's the 19.2 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the medium range architecture. And then, of course, you have the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack, which is the long range battery pack. And the 19.2 kilowatt hour battery pack delivers around 60 horsepower, but the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack, well, that bumps up max power to about 74 horsepower, and that is the version I'm driving today, the more powerful one, the car with the larger range as well. Tata Motors has been trying to find the right balance between affordability and range, which isn't easy because as you apply more denser batteries into the equation for better or rather higher charge, it also means increasing the cost. And that is something Tata Motors is working very hard on to find that right balance. So the Tiago EV is probably one of the best examples of getting that right balance. The Tiago EV also has two regenerative modes. Now, you can select one of those with stronger or weaker recuperation by using two buttons that are placed right here on the dashboard, right under the infotainment system, which I found a bit curious because those could have easily been shifted to the steering wheel, and like you have most premium cars that give you the recuperation modes or rather selectable recuperation modes using the paddle shift behind the steering wheel, Tata Motors could just have shifted those buttons onto the steering wheel over here itself alongside the audio control switches. Would have made life a little easier, but it's not very inconvenient. Now, those recuperative modes, well, you can shift from level 1 to level 2 to level 3 or cancel out all of them, come to level 0. What I liked about it is that even if you're in level 3, which is the strongest recuperative phase, the car doesn't really give you that jerky effect if you let go of the throttle pedal, which means drivability is still very smooth. Probably the smoothest I've ever experienced on any electric vehicle. The only time you can sense that retardation is when you're at a higher speed, 60 kilometers or 70 kilometers and above, and you let go of the throttle, and that's when you feel the vehicle slowing down rapidly as that recuperative system comes into effect. Now, the Tiago EV uses a high voltage architecture, which means charging speeds are quite fast. There are multiple options how you can charge the Tiago EV. Simplest is, of course, to plug in the car to a 15 amp wall socket, and that will charge your car from a state of charge of 10% all the way up to 100% in about almost 9 hours. You could also plug in the wall box unit. That would also take you around 9 hours to get to 100% state of charge. On a DC charger at about 7.2 kilowatt This battery will charge in about 3.5 hours, and you can charge at a maximum speed of about 50 kilowatts, in which case the battery pack would take a few minutes, 2 to 3 minutes, around 57 minutes to get to 100% state of charge. Now the battery pack for the Tiago EV sits in the back, in the boot essentially, just below the rear seat. And what it does is that it does not leave space for a spare tire. So you don't have a spare in this car. Instead, that space is occupied by the battery pack. Now because the battery pack is in the boot, the weight distribution is a 45-55, which means 45% of the weight comes from the front of the car, 55% of the weight is towards the rear. And does this alter dynamics? Well, not really, because Tata Motors have worked on the suspension, tweaked it in a way that it offers both good ride quality and the dynamics as well are stable. Is this a car that you could drive around with your family on long drives? Well, not really, because space is significantly constrained inside this cabin. There isn't a lot of boot space, and if you had to put anything more than a weekend's worth of luggage, well, you've got a problem. The Tata Motors' infotainment display, which is right here on the dashboard. Now, I think they could have done a lot more with this, because if you take a look, what you'll notice is that it's got multiple screens, but they're largely to do with connectivity, Bluetooth connections, audio, and none of the screens effectively gives you any information about this being an electric car and well, finding the right venues where you can get all the information you'd need to enhance your driving style. All of that can only be, well, seen on Tata Motors' Z Connect app, which means you got to use a phone to access all of that information. And that isn't, well, the nicest thing to do. I think Tata Motors could certainly have integrated a better system right here on the dashboard. On the instrument cluster right behind the steering wheel, you get very basic information. You've got the state of charge and you've got the range. Now I started the day with about 100% charge, at which point it showed me just about 220 kilometers of range. Here's the interesting part. Tata Motors' claimed efficiency with the 24 kilowatt hour battery pack is about 315 kilometers, but as sources inside mentioned this to me, that is under test cycles, and in real world conditions, well, 220 to 230 kilometers is the range that you will actually get. Similarly, if you had to go with the 19.2 kilowatt battery pack, the claimed range is about 250 kilometers. Real world should be anywhere between 160 to 170 kilometers of range. So my recommendation, of course, go in for the larger battery pack. Gets you better range, gets you better performance, and overall is the better hatchback to own. Now, there aren't too many niggles in the Tiago EV that I could find out, but one of those that I did find out is this gear selector knob, where if you look at it closely, it's in harsh sunlight right now, and you cannot make out the backlit illumination to understand which driving mode you are in. The only other indicator is right here on the instrument console, where you can see it in D, now in sport mode, or into neutral or reverse. The other niggle with that also is that you have to operate this knob, this dial, patiently, because it's not something that you can just rapidly get into. It does take a bit of getting used to. You just have to turn, wait, select again, and move on to the next. The Tiago EV also signifies the shift from Gen 1 to the next generation of electric vehicles from Tata Motors. This is the last of the Gen 1 EVs, and moving forward you will see, whether it's the Cruise or whether it's the Safari EV or whether it's even the Avinya, and its various iterations, well, those cars will essentially be built on, well, Tata Motors' Gen 3 platform, which will combine high voltage architectures, multiple body styles, better battery packs, more denser battery packs for more efficient charging, and will effectively be far superior electric vehicles compared to anything else in the market. I quite like this car. It's a good city runabout. It's a good urban hatchback. The ride quality is very impressive. The driving feel is also very impressive. And it really takes you very little time to adjust to driving an electric vehicle of this sort. So if you wanted, well, to be one of those early adopters to move into the world of EVs, the Tiago EV is probably your best bet.